sidewalk advocate report to us bloody medical waste strewn about the public right-of-way. Sidewalk, parking lot made its way across the street. A shout out to your amazing advocates because they keep such detailed reports. They really care about what they're doing. They're very observant. They notice. I was able to submit a complaint to the proper agency. When you have bloody, medical waste and products just out there, that means at some point it was mishandled, right? By one or more people, for sure. Because of that, now the regulators did take the report seriously. So when it happens again, if it happens again, or when something else happens, everything is there and ultimate accountability will be quicker. Report it to us and we will do with it what needs to be done.
Well, howdy everyone, and welcome again to the Lauren Musica Show. So here's a big question. What happens when an abortion facility is observed to be breaking the law or operating under unsafe conditions? When a sidewalk advocate notices something unsafe or potentially illegal happening at the local abortion facility, this is what we do. We reach out to our friends at the Center for Client Safety, and we share with them as much information as we were safely able to observe from the public right-of-way as we serve women and families who are entering that facility. And they take it from there, meticulously researching and documenting all laws and regulations being violated by the abortion facility, discreetly reporting their findings to the appropriate authorities, working with state agencies to ensure they conduct thorough investigations and take appropriate action, and following up to make sure no one drops the ball. The goal here is to hold the abortion industry accountable and to close dangerous abortion facilities, and to make sure that no further harm comes to vulnerable women and their preborn babies. I made a comment just before we hit record on this episode. Of course, all abortion businesses are dangerous because they take the lives of innocent children, and some are even going to that next level and hurting women and families, right? So we have to do our due diligence as a people of faith and conscience to follow up. We have partnered with the Center for Client Safety since its earliest days when it was known as Reprotection. It's now a division of another great partner organization, Americans United for Life. And together, we look forward to celebrating the closure of more dangerous abortion facilities. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation today. So let's jump right in and introduce our special guests. Center for Client Safety Director of Investigations, Christine Smith, has extensive experience in healthcare administration and a strong commitment to the pro-life movement. With a background in physician credentialing, Christine joined Center for Client Safety in 2021 as a volunteer, quickly rising to a full-time leadership role. She has transformed the investigations department, ensuring the integrity and thoroughness of every inquiry received from the pro-life community. Her strategic vision and operational experience have been instrumental in advancing the organization's mission to hold abortion businesses accountable and protect vulnerable women and children. Center for Client Safety Chief Impact Officer Amy Gehrke started out in the pro-life movement during her high school years when she volunteered for Westark Right to Life in Northwest Arkansas. After graduating from the University of Oklahoma, Amy dedicated nearly 11 years to National Right to Life in Washington, D.C., initially as a communications assistant and later as a marketing coordinator. Following her tenure there, she transitioned to serve as a legislative aide for the Wisconsin State Senate until her family relocated to Milwaukee in 2007. In 2015, Amy assumed the role of Vice President of Advancement and Development at Wisconsin Right to Life before taking on the position of Executive Director at Illinois Right to Life in Chicago in 2020. Amy joined Center for Client Safety in November of 2023 to help strengthen partnerships and garner support for their crucial mission. Let's go ahead and welcome to the program, Christine and Amy. Ladies, I am so excited to have you with me here today. We had your founder, Missy Martinez Stone, on, I think it was like a year ago. And so just so excited to do this follow-up and find out the latest. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So a lot can go wrong at an abortion facility. Gracious, surprise, surprise, right? So I want to just start out by asking you ladies, is there a particular angle that the Center for Client Safety finds most fruitful in calling a particular facility to accountability and ultimately closing it down?
Yeah, sure. I do not think that I would say there's one angle that automatically is more fruitful than any others.
Yeah.
And that's really the beauty of our model. We can be successful with a wide range of information. But there are two foundational principles that have to be in place for an investigation to progress. The first is that the information reported to us is gathered legally and ethically, and that's why we love Sidewalk Advocates for Life. You guys share our values and always want to do the right thing, and we can just trust your partnership so much. We love that. And then second of all, we actually have to find that there was a true violation of a law, a rule, or a regulation. So for example, in some states, there, can be a different kind of medical provider that does an abortion, such as a nurse practitioner or a physician's assistant. So someone may report to us and say, I witnessed an abortion day, but I don't think there was a doctor. And well, maybe in that state, it actually wasn't a violation, right? So we have to dig in and do all the research and figure out what was wrong. And the good news is it's our job to do all of that research. We want to take that burden off of you. Any information you have, report it. I always say just whatever you see, let us know. We take it from there. It's our job to figure that out. Even in really pro-abortion states, there's a lot of things that we can look into that don't have anything to do with abortion or even healthcare. We can look into things like zoning compliance, license and credentialing issues, fraud, false advertising. Those are all examples of ways that abortion businesses can break the law.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'll just say, gosh, what a relief it was to partner with you all because there are so many times that our sidewalk advocates see weird stuff on the
Mhm.
sidewalk, right?
Yeah.
Um, we have gotten reports of, for example, and this is hard to talk about, but this is the reality sometimes of doing ministry outside of an abortion facility. We've seen vultures circling the dumpster, right?
Mhm.
Oh,
And
wow.
again, the gut check is gracious, like something is off.
Right.
We see women who come out getting sick on the sidewalk and no one is there to drive them home, right? They're still
Mhm.
under anesthesia or having effects from the abortion procedure and having been under anesthesia. We see medical paraphernalia out on the sidewalk at times. And so again, we're just so grateful that we have a place now to take this information and to hold people accountable for how they're hurting women and families in this elevated way. Um, Ladies, in your most recent impact report, you mentioned successes like getting an abortionist license suspended or forcing an abortionist into early retirement. So, is that the sort of impact on the abortionist, typically a result of Center for Client Safety investigations?
So, our ultimate goal with almost every investigation is to shut down an abortion facility or to get whatever accountability is deserved on behalf of the abortion provider who's caused harm to a woman or broken a law. Our victories, though, take on a lot of different forms. In New York, for example, we prevented two Planned Parenthood facilities from opening by exposing improper business registrations and zoning violations. In Illinois, our work led to a significant fine being levied against an abortion provider who caused just absolutely horrific injuries to a woman after a botched abortion. In Wisconsin, actually from a sidewalk advocate, we learned that school officials were taking young women, presumably students, to abortion appointments, which was, as you can imagine, just a blatant violation of Wisconsin state law. Actually, Wisconsin law says that school officials can't take students to any medical appointment, let alone an abortion appointment. So, the one thing that all of our victories have in common is that they provide justice to women who've been harmed by the abortion industry when they might otherwise not have any justice whatsoever. And the beauty of our strategy is that because we investigate every law that an abortion facility breaks, not just abortion laws or health and safety laws, because we investigate every law that's being broken, this strategy can and has worked in every state, even the most pro abortion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think this is just such a universal sentiment, or it should be, right? Like, I mean, I would love for people to be in agreement that we shouldn't harm innocent children, but at the very least, people on both sides understanding that we need to hold the abortion facility accountable for maiming women, for hurting families. I mean, again, just such beautiful work that across the board people do and should recognize. Your impact report also mentions equipping a governor's office to enforce health standards and advising two states on licensure. Naturally, this work must take a lot of relationship building. Are you finding it is getting easier to connect with agencies on the state level, and why is that so important?
Sure. I would not say necessarily it gets easier and easier. I think again, going back to my first answer, it's a case by case basis. Believe it or not, I've encountered some of the most difficult regulators I've communicated with from really pro-life states. So it just depends on who you're dealing with and which agency. There's been some really pro-abortion states that have had regulators that want justice, and so they're easier to talk to and they want to hear our information. What I will say helps in almost every situation, though, is our goal is to approach a regulator on, the local, state, or federal level in a very level headed way, a very factual way. We don't go in assuming that they're against us or assuming that they won't enforce the law. They don't know what they don't know, so we want to bring them information. And oftentimes, no one has brought this information to them before, and especially in a way that allows them to act on it. So, our goal is always to solely present the facts and leave the emotional appeal out of our correspondence so we don't give them any basis to dismiss our information. And oftentimes, our research, it's not only including the information that we report, but it's also research that we do, looking at what actual state laws allow us to clearly demonstrate the authority that that given state agency has to investigate what we're asking them to do. For example, one time I submitted a complaint to the medical board about what sidewalk advocates witnessed to be unethical patient transport of women that were in medical distress. And I submitted that to the medical board, and they told me, no, that should go to the health department. But in that state, the health department doesn't regulate abortion facilities. They don't inspect them, they don't license them. So I had to outline the state law that said, actually, no, the medical board does have authority here. You have the responsibility to find out what provider this happened under, if that's what indeed went on. And they did. They opened the case, and that's still an ongoing investigation that's already yielded some fruit. So that's a big part of our research as well as, convincing these regulators to act by the law that outlines that for them. So, we definitely build a lot of relationships. I'll give you another example. We might have a trusted relationship with a legislator in a state where the Senate confirms medical board appointees, right? And so they have a vested interest in making sure that the medical board acts appropriately. So every level of an investigation, we look at who is the person responsible for enforcing this regulation. And if they aren't listening, they don't want to do their part, well, who is above them? And quite literally, we do work our way up to the governor's office or some high level of office and, figure out the best path for success there.
And I just wanted to add another reason that we are able to have such good relationships with both the enforcement agencies we work with, as well as our partners at Sidewalk Advocates and at Pregnancy Resource Centers, is that everybody knows that they can trust the Center for Client Safety. We always keep in mind that almost every investigation we undertake begins with a woman who's been harmed psychologically, physically, most times both, by the abortion industry. And it's a woman who's lost her precious child and who is hurting. One of our core values at CCS is to protect the personal, private, traumatic stories of these women who have been harmed. And it's also really important for our investigations themselves that we work on the down low. We don't want the abortion facility to know that we're investigating them, if at all possible. For our cases to succeed, we have to work under the radar. And actually, there was a case out of Colorado that really illustrates all of this. You and your listeners might remember, this was last year or the year before last, a woman in Fort Collins, Colorado, tragically died after a botched abortion at a facility there. The Center for Client Safety Christine and her team were immediately in contact with the woman's family, They were, of course, devastated. They wanted to work with us. Things were going really, really well. Then, out of the blue, one morning, I'm scrolling through social media, and there is this young woman's name and picture and all of the details of her story. Um,
Mm.
Somebody was not authorized to share this woman's information, had shared it with another pro-life organization, and it immediately was all over the internet. And three things happened. First of all, the woman's family was so upset. They didn't want to work with any other pro-life organizations. They immediately cut off communications with us.
Oh,
Second, the abortion facility knew that we were investigating them. So those two things basically caused what was a very solid case to immediately fall apart. Third, we can assume, with a lot of certainty that this woman, like so many women who have abortions, didn't want anybody to know, wanted to have the abortion and for it just to go away, for nobody to know. And now this woman's picture and her story were broadcast all over the internet. Her, most personal details of the most tragic thing that ever happened to her are her legacy now, which is just, it's heartbreaking. And the thing that we find is so often when these horrible things that happen at abortion facilities are just exposed with no strategy or thought behind it, all it really does is make pro-life individuals upset and angry. It doesn't really do anything to bring justice to the women or stop the wrongdoing. So it's so critical for us not only to be successful, but to respect the women that we serve, to keep things confidential and to work on enforcement rather than just exposure. We do share stories sometimes once information has been made public and once a case has been resolved. But again, one of our deepest core values is to respect the women that we serve and their personal private stories.
yeah. I love that about you guys. I know that there's been other organizations, in the past that sometimes will get information and it just they e-blast it everywhere, right? And what I have loved about working with you all is that we see this woman who has also been targeted by the abortion industry, who chose abortion in the first place quite often because she was hurting
Mhm.
and didn't know what to do or where to go. And yes, that doesn't justify the choice of abortion. But we know that so many of these women make this choice out of desperation. And then when something additional goes wrong, on top of the fact that they have, as you so well said, Amy, lost their precious baby, they're not only bereaved mothers, but they're mothers now that are dealing with something else on top of it, right? And so, can we be agents of healing and change without exploiting people or shaming people, even?
Exactly.
I think
Exactly.
there's
Well, and
something
the other thing that we find sometimes is, especially with younger women, it's so sad. They think that what happened to them was normal, or even worse,
Mm,
that they deserved what happened to them. And so
wow.
that's why it's so important that people know that there is this resource here that they can go to, remain confidential, and know that we will get justice for them. We'll do our darndest to make sure that they receive justice and the abortion providers that harmed them are held accountable.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that that's something that's so important to us as sidewalk advocates is, the goal here is to bring women to
Mhm.
the abundant life that we've been given in
Yes.
Christ, and,
Mhm.
shaming or exploiting somebody, is not gonna get us there, right?
No.
But instead letting them know that there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, and then seeking the justice that quite often, many of these families deserve when they have been deeply harmed by the abortionist or the facility. I think there's something to that, right?
No,
Um,
absolutely.
helps their healing. Yep. Well, tell us a little bit about what you're working on currently. And I say this with the caveat that I totally understand we're not going to be able to share identifying information, but maybe just generally, right? How many investigations are underway right now, and if any of them are nearing completion as well.
Yeah, I'd love to, and I have one case in particular I want to highlight a little bit about. So, your first question, how many investigations? So, I typically focus on about 10 to 15 what I call high priority investigations at a time. Also, though, I can tell you, we're monitoring about 40 to 50 different facilities and about the same number of providers. People tell me regular intel on certain facilities and providers. And so we monitor all of that. And sometimes, it depends on different factors, what investigation is a focus. So, for example, if there is some kind of public hearing or deadline, or there's a medical board coming up, a medical board meeting coming up in a certain state, that case might take priority. There's stuff we have to get done on a deadline. The other thing is if a woman herself is involved, a post-abortive woman that's talking to us and, telling her story and ready to do something about it, that's always going to be a priority for us to give her our attention and go on her timeline. So those factors all come into play, and sometimes I just need to triage certain things. But again, don't hesitate to report to us, because you never know what could, really be the next in to hold a facility accountable. So, and the case that I want to highlight a little bit is
Well, and another reason, I guess, that it's so important for people to report any wrongdoing that they see, any red flags that they witness, is with almost every investigation, we'll get a report about one avenue of wrongdoing. And as soon as we start investigating the facility, almost every time it is like opening a Pandora's box of laws being broken. I mean, if your business is killing children, then Medicaid fraud isn't really a big deal. So we'll investigate a facility for one avenue of wrongdoing and then discover, oh my goodness, there are all of these other things going wrong at this facility.
Yeah, yeah. I know that's something your founder, Missy Stone, and I used to talk about, is that if this is an entity that wheels and deals in the business of killing innocent children, chances are there's something else going on, right?
Mhm.
And the other thing too is, like, quite often we know where there's smoke, there's fire. So it's not a
right.
surprise to us that sometimes when we've reported something, that you gals have done some investigating and figured out there's so much more here, right? Or the agency that you're reporting to has discovered there's so much more here. And
Mhm.
I remember a handful of weeks ago when Melissa on our programs team brought to leadership that there had been this, quote unquote medical paraphernalia right outside of the abortion facility. I mean, there was an abortion instrument there. There was, bloody gauze and different things like this, right? And I just remember having a moment like, wow, this is the reality of abortion right in front of our face, in the driveway, for heaven's sake, right outside of the facility. And again, it felt like we got that little sliver of justice just to be able to say this is wrong and to report this, right? And so it gave
Yeah.
us just so much consolation having a place to take this information. Really, really a gift. What is your sense of the public's reaction to stories about unethical and unsafe behavior by abortion facilities? We alluded to this a little bit earlier. Across the board, do you see outrage on the rise, or do you still see a segment of the population that's so ready to defend abortion and abortion facilities because they misguidedly feel that they're justified in doing so because that's quote unquote supporting women?
Well, that is a really interesting question with a really interesting answer.
Yeah.
What we find is that both pro life and pro abortion individuals are so shocked by what we uncover at abortion facilities when, a case is concluded and we're able to share certain details. A lot of times they really don't believe what we share. It's just so horrific. There's actually a funny story. I wrote a letter to this wonderful pro life woman, and I talked about a case in Florida. A woman had been improperly administered anesthesia, and she literally came running out of the abortion facility with blood running down her legs, screaming for sidewalk advocates to call 911 for somebody to help her. She thought she was going to die in the abortion facility. So I
Mm.
shared that story, very, very true story with the this lovely donor. And I think her exact words were, "You don't have to engage in hyperbole to get a donation from me." And so I had to assure
Oh,
her I was not engaging in hyperbole, that what
yeah.
we uncovered was just so often so horrific, that the way women were being treated, let alone how brutally their children were being killed, the way women are being treated at these abortion facilities just is so beyond what anybody would consider good medical care. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
Um, many times people on the pro-abortion side think we're making it up. Obviously, we're not. And sadly, some people on the pro-life side just don't realize how bad it is.
Mm,
I've been in the pro-life movement forever, and I always say, just when you think the abortion industry can't shock you any more than it has, it does. And that's the reason that Christine and I both feel so blessed to be part of the Center for Client Safety. This is such a groundbreaking strategy that is actually holding abortion providers accountable for all of the wrongdoing that they do.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm almost chuckling to myself, like the donor thought you had to elevate that story somehow to get her support, and in reality, you just tell the truth, and this is what it
Exactly.
is, right?
Mhm.
And it's like it's sad and it's shocking sometimes. It really is. But this is the business of abortion, and I know I've had pro-choice, so-called pro-choice friends who, when I mentioned your particular work at CCS, they, to their credit, they did say, well, that's really good. They can at least recognize something on that level. And of course, I hope to walk that friend a little bit closer to where we are and valuing life at every stage. But again, the service that you provide is absolutely unparalleled, and it brings us such a relief because there's only so much we can take to the attorneys. Legal
Right.
issues pop up. We always follow the law, but sometimes the police don't understand the law in the various communities that we're in when we're serving on the public right of way. And before, we used to just take all this information to our attorneys, but even they didn't completely understand sometimes where to take this, right? Because I can say this as an attorney now in the pro life movement that we've got very specific training, and this is a different art. And you all having the uh, experience and the education to know where to take this, how to write these reports, how to hold them accountable. There really is a craft here that is, again, unparalleled and such a service to our community. In closing here, Christine, can I have you really quickly share how people can make a report? A lot of people are with our community, but some people go to the abortion facility and they're with another organization, they individually sidewalk counsel, others go and pray, and they do see things. And so what's the best way to make a report? And then Amy, if you're up for ending with how people can contact you all and stay in touch with you at Center for Client Safety, that'd be great.
Sure, the easiest, best way to report is to go to our website, centerforclientsafety.org, and there is a big button that says report. And you click on that, it leads you to a form where you fill out a few questions so I can get a sense of what you are reporting. That information comes directly to my team. We review it and get back to you right away. So that's really the best way. Centerforclientsafety.org, click report, and fill out that form.
Awesome. All right, Amy, how can they find you?
So you can visit our website, which is really easy to remember. It is centerforclientsafety.org, the website that Christine just mentioned. And one thing I want to mention real fast is all of our well, not all, the vast majority of our investigations begin with a report from a sidewalk advocate, from a pregnancy resource center, from those of you who are on the ground, who are seeing these things firsthand. But the information that we're able to use to investigate, it's really important that it's obtained legally, that certain criteria are met. And we provide training to sidewalk advocates and to pregnancy resource centers to help them recognize red flags, to know what sorts of things they can report. If you hadn't had the training, go ahead and report if you think you've seen something wrong. But if you'd like to learn a little bit more about what to look for, how to report it, what to do and what not to do, please email us at info, I-N-F-O, at centerforclientsafety.org. We would love to talk to your PRC or your group of sidewalk advocates or any pro-life organization about how you can help us hold the abortion industry accountable.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies, so much for being with us. This has just been so enlightening, I'm sure, for so many people who have yet to still get to know you and the great service that you provide to the pro-life community, to really anybody, right? And making sure that we protect these women and families. And yes, we hope to win over the world with the idea that an abortion facility is dangerous, period. But until then, we're going to do as much as we can to hold people accountable to the law and beyond, and making sure that we don't add more fuel to the fire here, and that we can help these women and families heal from what they've been through. So again, thank you so much for your service. And if you didn't catch what Amy said, we're going to go ahead and put all that information in the show notes. So you can go ahead and click around and learn more about Center for Client Safety and the umbrella over it, Americans United for Life, one of our longtime partners as well. We're so grateful for you and your team, Christine and Amy. So keep up the great work. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for
Absolutely.
having us.
Okay, a quick closing thought. I think all of us have heard or read the occasional story about a woman being taken from an abortion facility in an ambulance, about medical waste being found on abortion facility property when it was not properly disposed of, about abortionists operating without a license, or abortion facility, again, supposedly a medical facility that was found to be unclean and unsafe. But these occasional stories are just a drop in the bucket, as these ladies have outlined so well. Media doesn't always choose to cover the bad behavior of abortion facilities and their staff because many people don't want to hear the truth about abortion either. And that's what makes the Center for Client Safety's work so vitally important. It is painstaking, it is meticulous, it can be slow at times, especially when dealing with various agencies. But their work documents law breaking that cannot be argued, and breaking the law demands punishment. Whether that punishment is the loss of an abortionist license, fines on an abortion facility, or the permanent closure of that facility, it is a victory for life. If the facility remains open, at least we have the consolation that it may send fewer women to the emergency room. But if that facility closes forever, then we can celebrate that abortion is ended in that neighborhood or community. Again, I thank God so much for this organization, for our partnership, for the individuals who are so diligent in their work to document wrongdoing, to strive to keep women and their preborn babies safe, and in the quest to end abortion. So again, I hope you'll join me in celebrating the great work of Center for Client Safety and our great partnership here in the movement. Thank you again, everyone, for joining me for another episode of the Laura Musica Show. We'll be back here next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central for another show. Have a great week. See you soon.